Welcome to today's episode. Picture this. 300,000 years ago, somewhere along the shores of a pristine lake in what would one day become Germany. You are standing there, an early human, perhaps Homo heidelbergensis, your hands gripping a wooden spear nearly 8 feet long. The morning mist rises from the water as you scan the landscape for signs of movement. But you are not alone. In the shadows of the surrounding forest, golden eyes watch your every move. These aren't the eyes of any predator you might imagine today. They belong to Homotherium latidens, the saber-toothed cat, a predator that stands over 3 feet tall at the shoulder, weighs as much as 2 modern humans, and possesses canine teeth longer than your entire hand. This wasn't just another day of hunting and gathering. This was a deadly game of chess played between 2 intelligent species, where one wrong move meant death. The saber-toothed cat had ruled these landscapes for millions of years, perfecting the art of killing. But something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in Earth's history, their prey was beginning to fight back, not with claws or fangs, but with something far more dangerous: intelligence. You see, this story isn't really about who was bigger or stronger. It's about how our ancestors, armed with nothing but wood, stone, and brilliant minds, managed to outsmart some of the most formidable predators our planet has ever known. By the end of this journey, you'll understand how this ancient battle shaped everything from our social structures to our deepest fears, and why understanding this relationship is crucial to comprehending what makes us human. The central question that drives our entire story: how did our ancestors, relatively small and defenseless primates, not only survive, but ultimately triumph over predators that had perfected the art of killing for millions of years? Chapter 1. First Contact. 300,000 years ago, the world was a very different place. Imagine stepping into a time machine and emerging in what we now call Europe. The landscape before you would be both familiar and utterly alien. Rolling grasslands stretched to the horizon, punctuated by dense forests of oak and pine. Rivers carved through valleys where herds of straight-tusked elephants grazed alongside rhinoceroses and ancient horses. But hidden in this seemingly peaceful scene lurked some of the most formidable predators our planet has ever known. Among these apex predators, none were more perfectly designed for killing than the saber-toothed cats. The name itself conjures images of fearsome prehistoric beasts, but the reality was far more complex and terrifying than any Hollywood portrayal could capture. These weren't simply oversized house cats with dental problems. They represented the pinnacle of predatory evolution, refined over millions of years into killing machines of extraordinary efficiency. The most famous of these predators, Smilodon fatalis, prowled the Americas with canine teeth that could reach 8 inches in length. But in the European landscape we're exploring, a different species ruled: Homotherium latidens, the saber-toothed cat. Recent discoveries have revolutionized our understanding of these creatures. In 2020, prospectors hunting for mammoth tusks in Siberia made an extraordinary find: a perfectly preserved kitten, complete with fur, whiskers, and claws, frozen in permafrost for 37,000 years. This remarkable specimen revealed details that bones alone could never tell us. The kitten's fur was dark brown, not spotted like many modern big cats. Its neck was unusually thick and muscular, even at just 3 weeks old. Most intriguingly, its long upper lip suggested that those famous canine teeth would have been covered in adulthood, hidden until the moment of attack. But size and weaponry alone don't tell the complete story of these predators. Recent genetic analysis has uncovered something that would have terrified our ancestors even more than massive fangs. Homotherium was built for persistence hunting. Unlike the ambush predators we might imagine, these cats were long-distance runners, capable of pursuing prey for miles across the landscape. Think of them as the marathon runners of the predator world, combining endurance with explosive power. The fossil record tells us that these cats didn't hunt alone. Evidence from sites like the La Brie tar pits suggests they lived in social groups, working together to bring down prey much larger than themselves. Imagine encountering not one of these predators, but an entire pack, coordinating their attack with the precision of a military unit. Into this world of apex predators stepped our ancestors. They weren't the dominant species we might imagine. Early humans like Homo heidelbergensis stood about the same height as modern people, but were built for survival in a much harsher world. Their brains were already significantly larger than their earlier ancestors, yet they faced a fundamental problem that no amount of intelligence seemed capable of solving. They were prey. The evidence is written in bone and stone across archaeological sites throughout Europe and Africa. At Swartkrans Cave in South Africa, researchers have found the skull of an early human child with distinctive puncture wounds that perfectly match the spacing of saber-toothed cat canines. The message is clear and chilling. We were on the menu. This predator-prey relationship wasn't occasional or opportunistic. It was systematic and ongoing. Analysis of numerous archaeological sites reveals a pattern that would have been terrifyingly familiar to our ancestors. Saber-toothed cats weren't just killing humans when other prey was scarce. They were actively hunting us. Consider the psychological impact of living under such constant threat. Modern humans living in areas with large predators, such as the Agda people of the Philippines, who share their environment with reticulated pythons, show us what this might have been like. Among the Agda, 1 in 4 men has been attacked by a python, and 1 in 20 has been killed. This isn't ancient history. It's happening today, and it gives us a glimpse into the daily reality our ancestors faced. But something remarkable was beginning to happen in those ancient landscapes. Archaeological evidence from sites like Qingnan in Germany reveals that our ancestors weren't simply running and hiding anymore. Alongside the fossilized remains of saber-toothed cats, archaeologists have found something unprecedented: sophisticated wooden spears, some nearly 8 feet long, crafted with the precision of modern tools. These weren't crude sticks sharpened in desperation. They were carefully engineered weapons, designed with understanding of balance, weight distribution, and aerodynamics. The wood had been selected for specific properties: spruce for its combination of strength and flexibility. The tips were fire-hardened to create points capable of penetrating hide and muscle. The discovery of these spears alongside saber-toothed cat remains tells us something profound about this moment in human evolution. For the first time in the relationship between our species and these apex predators, the humans weren't just prey. They were armed, organized, and increasingly dangerous. But having weapons was only the beginning. The real challenge lay in using them effectively against predators that had been perfecting their killing techniques for millions of years. A saber-toothed cat could cover ground at speeds approaching 40 miles per hour in short bursts. They possessed reflexes honed by countless generations of successful hunters. Their social groups could coordinate attacks with deadly precision. Against this formidable array of natural weapons and instincts, our ancestors had only their intelligence, their tools, and something else that was beginning to emerge as their greatest asset: their ability to work together in ways no other species had ever achieved. The stage was set for a battle that would reshape the course of evolution itself. On one side stood predators representing millions of years of evolutionary refinement. On the other, a species that was just beginning to discover the power of technology, cooperation, and strategic thinking. The first contact between these two forces would determine not just the survival of individual humans, but the future of our entire species. What happened next would echo through hundreds of thousands of years, ultimately determining which species would inherit the Earth. Chapter 2: Ancient Arsenal. The morning sun cast long shadows across the prehistoric landscape as our ancestor knelt beside a fallen tree, carefully examining its grain. This wasn't random scavenging. This was engineering. 300,000 years ago, The creation of a weapon capable of stopping a saber-toothed cat required understanding principles that wouldn't be formally described by science for hundreds of millennia. The wooden spears discovered at Schmingen represent one of humanity's first great technological leaps. But calling them simple spears dramatically understates their sophistication. These were precision instruments, each one representing hours of careful planning and meticulous craftsmanship. The humans who created them understood concepts of leverage, balance, and material science that seem almost impossibly advanced for their time. Archaeological analysis has revealed that these early toolmakers were remarkably selective about their materials. They chose spruce for its unique combination of strength and flexibility. The wood was harvested at specific times of year when moisture content was optimal. The spears were shaped using stone tools with edges sharper than modern surgical scalpels, creating perfectly balanced projectiles with carefully tapered points. But perhaps most remarkably, these weapons were fire-hardened. This process required controlling fire at specific temperatures for precise durations, transforming soft wood into points capable of penetrating the thick hide of prehistoric megafauna. The technology was complex enough that it required not just individual skill, but accumulated knowledge passed down through generations. The creation of effective weapons was only the first challenge our ancestors faced. The second was learning to use them against predators that seemed almost impossibly dangerous. A saber-toothed cat possessed advantages that appeared overwhelming. Their canine teeth, reaching lengths of up to 8 inches in some species, weren't just for show. These were precision-killing instruments, curved and serrated, designed to slice through vital arteries with surgical precision. Modern biomechanical analysis has revealed how these predators use their fearsome dental arsenal. Unlike modern big cats that kill through suffocation or crushing vertebrae, saber-toothed cats were precision slashers. They would grapple with their prey, then deliver devastating cuts to the throat or abdomen, allowing the victim to bleed out rapidly. It was efficient, effective, and terrifying. Against such formidable natural weapons, our ancestors needed more than individual tools. They needed systems. Evidence from multiple archaeological sites suggests that early humans developed coordinated hunting strategies that could be adapted for defense. The same techniques used to bring down a woolly rhinoceros could be modified to fend off an attacking predator. Consider the psychological challenge this represented. Modern humans living in urban environments often struggle with anxiety about threats that are statistically negligible. Our ancestors faced genuine daily threats from predators specifically evolved to kill members of their species. The development of effective weapons wasn't just about technology. It was about overcoming fear that could paralyze rational thought. But our ancestors possessed something their predators lacked: the ability to learn and adapt at an unprecedented pace. While saber-toothed cats relied on instincts refined over millions of years, humans could modify their strategies based on new information. A failed encounter with a predator became a learning opportunity rather than simply a tragedy. The archaeological record provides glimpses of this adaptive process. Tool designs show continuous refinement over thousands of years. Spear points become more aerodynamic. Shaft designs improve for better balance. New techniques emerge for creating more durable points. This wasn't random tinkering. It was systematic development driven by the ultimate performance test: life or death encounters with apex predators. Fire represented another crucial element in humanity's growing arsenal. The controlled use of fire provided multiple advantages against predators. Most obviously, it served as a deterrent. Nearly all animals possess an instinctive fear of fire, evolved over millions of years of avoiding natural blazes. A group of humans gathered around a fire was significantly safer than one camping in darkness. But fire offered subtler advantages as well. It extended the usable day, allowing humans to remain active and alert during the dangerous transition periods of dawn and dusk. when many predators were most active. Fire provided light for toolmaking and maintenance, ensuring weapons remained in optimal condition. Perhaps most importantly, it served as a signal, visible from great distances. Fire announced the presence of organized, tool-using humans to any predators in the area. The development of fire-making technology was as challenging as weapon creation. Early humans needed to master the production of sparks, the selection of appropriate tinder, and the maintenance of flames under various weather conditions. Evidence suggests they developed multiple fire-starting techniques, from striking flint against pyrite to friction-based methods using specially prepared wood. Archaeological sites from this period reveal another crucial innovation: the specialized toolkit. Rather than relying on a single all-purpose implement, our ancestors began creating arrays of specialized tools, each optimized for specific tasks. Alongside hunting spears, they developed shorter stabbing weapons for close combat, cutting tools for processing materials, and scrapers for preparing hides and sharpening wooden implements. This specialization required unprecedented levels of planning and resource management. A group preparing for a potential encounter with saber-toothed cats needed to ensure every member was properly equipped. Tools had to be maintained, replaced when damaged, and constantly improved based on experience. The social implications of this technological development were profound. Creating and maintaining an effective arsenal required cooperation on a scale never before seen in the animal kingdom. Knowledge had to be shared between individuals and preserved across generations. The group had to coordinate resource gathering, tool production, and training. Evidence suggests that this period saw the emergence of the first true specialists within human groups. Some individuals became expert toolmakers, developing skills in stone knapping and woodworking that far exceeded those of their peers. Others specialized in fire management, maintaining the group's flames and teaching fire-starting techniques. Still others focused on weapon design and combat techniques. This specialization created the foundation for something that would prove even more powerful than individual weapons: coordinated group tactics. A single human with a spear faced overwhelming odds against a saber-toothed cat. But a group of humans, each armed with specialized weapons and operating according to practiced strategies, presented a very different challenge to any predator. The transformation wasn't immediate. Archaeological evidence suggests it took tens of thousands of years for these technologies to spread and evolve. But once the process began, it accelerated with remarkable speed. Each generation built upon the innovations of their predecessors, creating an ever more sophisticated arsenal. By the end of this technological revolution, our ancestors had accomplished something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth. They had created artificial advantages that could overcome natural ones. Their tools and techniques were beginning to level the playing field against predators that had ruled unchallenged for millions of years. The stage was set for the next phase of this ancient conflict, learning to use these tools not just for individual survival, but as part of coordinated group strategies that would fundamentally alter the balance of power between humans and their predators. Chapter 3. Pack mentality dawn broke across the ancient landscape, and with it came the sound that would have chilled the blood of any solitary creature. Coordinated human voices, calling to each other across the terrain. What had once been the cry of individual prey had evolved into something far more dangerous: the communication of organized hunters. The saber-toothed cats who had ruled these lands for millions of years were about to encounter something they had never faced before: genuine teamwork. Modern humans take cooperation for granted, but the level of coordination our ancestors achieved was revolutionary in the animal kingdom. While saber-toothed cats did hunt in groups, their coordination was limited by instinct and dominance hierarchies. Human cooperation was something entirely different: flexible, adaptive, and capable of solving problems in real time. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe and Africa reveals the emergence of cooperative strategies that transformed early humans from scattered prey into formidable opponents. The key wasn't just working together. It was working together intelligently, with each individual understanding their role in complex, multi-layered plans. Consider the challenges this cooperation had to overcome. A group of early humans facing a saber-toothed cat couldn't simply swarm their opponent like army ants. These predators were too large, too fast, and too dangerous for simple mob tactics to succeed. Instead, our ancestors developed sophisticated strategies that maximized their advantages while minimizing individual risk. Evidence suggests they employed what modern military strategists would recognize as combined arms tactics. Different group members took on specialized roles. Some served as spotters, using elevated positions to track predator movements. Others acted as drivers, using noise and movement to force predators into disadvantageous positions. Still others served as the primary attack force, wielding spears and other weapons. The psychological aspects of this cooperation were as important as the tactical ones. Facing a saber-toothed cat alone would have triggered every instinct to flee. But humans in groups could support each other emotionally as well as physically. Shared courage became possible when individuals knew their companions would stand beside them rather than abandon them to save themselves. Modern studies of hunter-gatherer societies provide insights into how this cooperation might have functioned. Among the Hadza people of Tanzania, hunting groups demonstrate remarkable coordination without formal leadership structures. Decisions emerge through subtle communication and shared understanding of each individual's capabilities and preferences. Similar dynamics likely governed our ancestors' defensive strategies. The development of effective group tactics required solving complex communication challenges. Commands had to be given quickly and quietly enough not to alert predators. Information about predator location and behavior had to be shared instantly across the group. Coordination had to continue even when visual contact between group members was broken. Evidence suggests early humans developed sophisticated signaling systems long before formal language emerged. Archaeological sites reveal patterns of stone tool placement that may have served as markers or messages. Cave paintings from later periods show clear evidence of symbolic communication. These capabilities would have been crucial for coordinating anti-predator strategies. But cooperation extended far beyond immediate combat situations. The most effective defense against saber-toothed cats was avoiding encounters entirely, and this required group-level intelligence gathering and strategic planning. Evidence from multiple sites suggests early humans developed what modern security experts would recognize as early warning systems. Groups would position scouts at strategic locations around their territory, creating overlapping fields of observation that made it nearly impossible for large predators to approach undetected. These scouts used sophisticated signaling methods to communicate threats across considerable distances. Smoke signals, reflected light, and acoustic signals could alert entire communities to approaching danger. The logistics of group defense were staggering. Weapons had to be distributed and maintained. Individuals had to be trained not just in tool use, but in coordinated tactics. Food and other resources had to be managed to support larger group sizes. Children and elderly group members had to be protected without compromising the group's mobility or defensive capabilities. Archaeological evidence suggests that this period saw a dramatic increase in group sizes. While earlier human ancestors typically lived in small family units, sites from this era show evidence of much larger communities. The advantages of cooperative defense apparently outweighed the challenges of feeding and coordinating larger groups. This scaling up created new challenges and opportunities. Larger groups could mount more effective defenses, but they also presented more attractive targets to predators. They could support more specialization and division of labor, but they required more complex social structures to prevent internal conflicts that might compromise external defense. Evidence from sites like Terra Amata in France suggests early humans developed sophisticated camp layouts optimized for defense. Living areas were arranged to provide multiple escape routes while concentrating defensive capabilities at likely approach routes. Fire pits were positioned to provide maximum illumination of surrounding areas. Tool caches were strategically placed to ensure weapons were always within reach. The social innovations required for effective cooperation had implications far beyond predator defense. Groups that could coordinate complex defensive strategies could also coordinate hunting large prey, gathering resources across wide areas, and sharing knowledge across generations. Cooperation became a general-purpose survival tool that provided advantages in every aspect of life. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this cooperative revolution was its adaptability. Unlike the fixed behaviors of other social species, human cooperation could be modified based on circumstances. Tactics could be adjusted based on the specific predators encountered, the terrain being defended, and the composition of the defending group. Archaeological evidence shows continuous innovation in cooperative strategies across thousands of years. Defensive formations become more sophisticated. Communication systems become more complex. Resource management becomes more efficient. The rate of innovation accelerated as groups shared successful techniques and learned from failures. This adaptability provided a crucial advantage against predators whose behaviors were largely fixed by instinct. A saber-toothed cat's hunting strategy was refined by millions of years of evolution, but it was also constrained by that same evolutionary history. Human strategies could evolve within a single generation, allowing rapid adaptation to new threats or changing circumstances. The success of these cooperative strategies created a feedback loop that accelerated human development. Groups with better cooperation survived and thrived, passing their techniques to larger numbers of descendants. The advantages of cooperation became so significant that they drove further innovations in communication, toolmaking, and social organization. By the end of this period, the relationship between humans and saber-toothed cats had fundamentally shifted. What had once been a simple predator-prey relationship had become something more complex, a contest between two different forms of intelligence. On one side stood predators with millions of years of evolutionary refinement. On the other stood creatures whose greatest weapon was their ability to think, learn, and work together in ways no other species had ever achieved. The stage was set for the next phase of this ancient conflict, where the full power of human cooperation would be tested against predators who were about to discover that their prey had become something unprecedented, an organized, intelligent, and increasingly dangerous opponent. Chapter 4. Firepower. The first spark struck in the gathering darkness would have seemed insignificant to any watching predator, just a tiny point of light in the vast wilderness. But that spark represented something revolutionary. Humans had learned to control the element that all other creatures feared. Fire wasn't just a tool for our ancestors. It was their declaration of independence from the natural order that had kept them as prey for millions of years. The mastery of fire marked perhaps the most crucial turning point in the ancient battle between humans and saber-toothed cats. For the first time in Earth's history, a prey species had gained access to a force that even the most fearsome predators instinctively avoided. The psychological impact on both species would have been profound and immediate. Evidence from sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa shows that humans were experimenting with controlled fire as early as 1 million years ago. But it wasn't until much later, around 400,000 years ago, that fire use became widespread and sophisticated enough to serve as an effective defensive tool. Archaeological sites from this period reveal hearths that weren't just sources of heat and light, but carefully engineered defensive installations. The technical challenges of mastering fire were enormous. Creating fire required understanding the complex interaction between fuel, oxygen, and heat. Maintaining fire demanded constant attention and resource management. Using fire effectively for defense required additional knowledge about positioning, fuel selection, and fire behavior under various weather conditions. Our ancestors developed multiple methods for creating fire, each suited to different circumstances. The friction method, using fireboards and spindles, could produce flame even in damp conditions, but required significant physical effort and specially prepared materials. The percussion method, striking flint against pyrite or other iron-rich minerals, could create sparks quickly, but required the right geological materials and dry tinder. Evidence suggests that fire-making knowledge was closely guarded and carefully transmitted within groups. The loss of fire could mean death for an entire community, so maintaining the knowledge and materials necessary for fire creation became a critical survival skill. Some individuals likely specialized in fire management, becoming the guardians of techniques that kept their entire group alive. The defensive applications of fire were remarkably sophisticated. Modern experiments have shown that controlled burns could create fire breaks that channeled predator movements into prepared killing zones. Torch arrangements could illuminate approaches to campsites, eliminating the cover of darkness that many predators relied upon. Coordinated fire signals could summon help from distant groups or warn of approaching threats. But fire provided advantages beyond simple deterrence. The ability to see and work after dark extended the human day by several crucial hours. While saber-toothed cats were most active during dawn and dusk transitions, fire allowed humans to remain alert and organized during these dangerous periods. Groups could maintain watches throughout the night, ensuring predators could never achieve the element of surprise. Fire also transformed food preparation in ways that provided defensive advantages. Cooked food was easier to digest, allowing humans to extract more nutrition from smaller quantities of food. This improved nutrition supported larger brain development and better physical condition. Perhaps more importantly, cooked food could be prepared quickly and consumed rapidly when threats approached, eliminating the vulnerability associated with extended feeding times. The social implications of fire control were equally revolutionary. Gathering around fires became central to human social organization. These gatherings provided opportunities for sharing information about predator movements, coordinating defensive strategies, and passing knowledge to younger group members. Fire became the focal point for developing the complex communication skills that would prove crucial in confronting organized predators. Archaeological evidence suggests that fire use drove innovations in other technologies as well. Fire-hardened wooden spears were significantly more effective than untreated wood. Heat treatment could improve the knapping quality of stone tools, creating sharper and more durable edges. Fire could be used to process adhesives for hafting tools to handles, creating more reliable weapons. The psychological impact of fire mastery on predator behavior would have been significant. Saber-toothed cats, like most large predators, possessed an instinctive fear of fire developed over millions of years of avoiding natural blazes. The sight and smell of controlled fires would have triggered deep-seated avoidance behaviors, causing predators to alter their hunting patterns and territory usage. Modern studies of predator behavior around human settlements provide insights into these dynamics. Large carnivores consistently avoid areas with regular fire activity, even when prey is abundant. The mere presence of smoke and the smell of burned wood can cause predators to abandon territories they might otherwise occupy. Our ancestors learned to exploit these instinctive fears, using fire to create safe zones within otherwise dangerous landscapes. But fire mastery also created new vulnerabilities that had to be managed. Fires could reveal human locations to predators from great distances. Smoke could mask the scent of approaching threats. The light that provided protection could also eliminate night vision making it difficult to detect dangers beyond the fire's illumination. Effective fire use required balancing these competing considerations. Evidence from multiple archaeological sites suggests early humans developed sophisticated fire management protocols to address these challenges. Fires were positioned to maximize defensive benefits while minimizing risks. Multiple smaller fires were often preferred over single large ones, providing redundancy if one was extinguished and creating overlapping zones of protection. Fuel was carefully managed to ensure fires could be maintained without leaving the protected area. The relationship between fire and group dynamics was complex and transformative. Fire created a central gathering point that encouraged larger group sizes, but it also required increased cooperation for fuel gathering and maintenance. The group members responsible for fire management gained significant influence, as their skills were literally matters of life and death for the entire community. Fire use also enabled new forms of territorial control that provided strategic advantages against predators. Controlled burns could modify landscapes, creating clearings that provided better visibility and reducing cover for stalking predators. Fire could be used to drive prey animals into more defensible areas, concentrating food resources where they could be protected more effectively. The seasonal aspects of fire management created additional strategic opportunities. During dry seasons, fire could be used more aggressively to modify landscapes and establish territorial boundaries. During wet seasons, the ability to maintain fire became more critical, as natural fires were less common and predators might be more willing to approach human settlements. Perhaps most importantly, fire mastery represented a fundamental shift in the relationship between humans and their environment. For the first time, a species was actively modifying its surroundings to gain advantages over predators. This represented the beginning of environmental engineering, the deliberate manipulation of natural systems to serve human purposes. The success of fire-based defensive strategies created cascading effects throughout the ecosystem. Predators learned to avoid areas with regular human fire activity, concentrating their hunting in other regions. This created safe corridors for human movement and expanded the territories that groups could effectively control. Fire didn't just protect individual groups. It began to reshape entire landscapes. By the end of this period, the ancient relationship between predators and prey had been fundamentally altered. Humans had gained access to an element that provided both physical and psychological advantages over even the most formidable predators. The saber-toothed cats who had once ruled unchallenged were beginning to encounter prey that could strike back with the power of controlled fire. Chapter 5. Tactical Genius. The morning mist clung to the valley floor as a group of early humans moved with purposeful silence through the ancient landscape. But this wasn't the desperate flight of prey from predators. This was something new under the sun. Intelligent creatures implementing a carefully planned strategy designed to turn the tables on apex predators who had never faced organized opposition. The age of human tactical thinking had begun. What separated early human defensive strategies from the simple group behaviors of other prey species was their remarkable sophistication and adaptability. Archaeological evidence suggests our ancestors developed tactical systems that would be recognizable to modern military strategists. Coordinated movement, diversionary tactics, ambush strategies, and perhaps most importantly, the ability to think several moves ahead of their opponents. The development of tactical thinking represented a fundamental shift in how conflicts with predators unfolded. Previously, encounters between humans and saber-toothed cats were simple affairs. Predator attacks, prey flees, or dies. But increasingly, these encounters became complex chess matches where each side's moves influenced the other's options, and where superior planning could overcome superior physical capabilities. Evidence from sites like Boxgrave in England reveals that early humans were thinking tactically about more than just defense. The same cognitive skills required for coordinated hunting of large prey could be adapted for confronting predators. The ability to predict animal behavior, coordinate group movements, and exploit environmental advantages became general-purpose survival tools. Consider the sophistication required for what archaeologists call persistence hunting, the technique of pursuing prey over long distances until exhaustion made them vulnerable. This strategy required understanding animal psychology, reading subtle behavioral cues, coordinating the efforts of multiple hunters across hours or even days, and maintaining group cohesion despite physical and mental fatigue. The same skills could be reversed, using knowledge of predator behavior to avoid, confuse, or defeat them. The tactical innovations our ancestors developed were remarkably diverse and creative. Evidence suggests they employed what modern strategists would recognize as deception and misdirection. False camps could be established to draw predators away from actual group locations. Deliberate scent trails could lead predators into prepared ambush sites. Even individual behavior could be modified to send false signals about group size, health, or capabilities. Archaeological analysis of tool arrangements at various sites suggests early humans developed sophisticated understanding of terrain advantages. High ground provided better visibility and forced predators to attack uphill, reducing their charge speed and agility. Narrow passages could limit predator maneuverability while allowing human weapons to be used more effectively. Natural barriers like rivers or cliff faces could be incorporated into defensive plans, creating escape routes for humans while blocking predator movement. The psychological aspects of tactical thinking were as important as the physical ones. Humans learned to read predator behavior and predict their actions. Saber-toothed cats, like most predators, followed relatively predictable hunting patterns dictated by millions of years of evolutionary programming. Humans could learn these patterns and use them to their advantage. Modern studies of predator behavior reveal the consistency of these patterns. Large cats typically approach from downwind to avoid detection, prefer specific types of terrain for stalking, and attack from preferred angles that maximize their physical advantages. Early humans who understood these preferences could position themselves to disrupt predator plans and force encounters on human terms rather than predator terms. Evidence suggests our ancestors developed what modern analysts would recognize as intelligence-gathering systems. Tracks, scat, territorial markings, and other signs could be read to determine predator presence, numbers, health status, and likely hunting patterns. This information could then be used to plan group movements, select camping sites, and prepare defensive strategies. The social coordination required for effective tactical implementation was unprecedented in the animal kingdom. Unlike pack hunters, whose coordination is largely instinctual, human tactical coordination required conscious planning, flexible role assignment, and real-time adaptation to changing circumstances. Group members had to understand not just their own roles, but how their actions affected the success of the overall plan. Archaeological evidence suggests that this period saw the development of sophisticated leadership structures within human groups. Tactical coordination required individuals who could assess situations, make rapid decisions, and communicate plans effectively to other group members. These early tactical leaders were likely among the first humans to develop what we would recognize as strategic thinking skills. The weapons and tools of this period show clear evidence of tactical specialization. Different tools were optimized for different roles within coordinated strategies. Long spears for maintaining distance from predators, short stabbing weapons for close combat, throwing implements for harassing and distracting predators, stone projectiles for stunning or injuring at range. Each tool represented a specific tactical capability within larger strategic frameworks. Training and practice became essential elements of human survival strategies. Groups that could maintain higher skill levels through regular practice would have significant advantages in predator encounters. This practice also served to coordinate group responses and ensure tactical plans could be executed under stress. The development of tactical thinking had profound implications for human cognitive development. Planning complex strategies required abstract thinking, mental modeling of future scenarios, and understanding of cause and effect relationships across extended time periods. These cognitive demands likely accelerated brain development and contributed to the rapid increase in human intelligence during this period. Evidence suggests that successful tactical innovations spread rapidly between groups through cultural transmission. Archaeological sites across wide geographic areas show similar defensive arrangements and tool specializations, suggesting that successful strategies were shared and adapted by multiple communities. This cultural sharing accelerated the development of increasingly sophisticated tactical systems. The seasonal aspects of predator behavior created additional tactical opportunities for human groups. Predators had breeding seasons when they were more aggressive and protective of territory. They had seasonal migration patterns that could be predicted and exploited. Understanding these patterns allowed humans to plan seasonal movements and activities that minimized dangerous encounters while maximizing resource-gathering opportunities. Perhaps most remarkably, evidence suggests early humans developed what modern strategists would recognize as strategic deception on a large scale. Entire groups could coordinate to present false information about their capabilities, numbers, or intentions to potential predators. These deceptions could cause predators to avoid areas entirely or approach under circumstances that favored human defenders. The success of these tactical innovations created a feedback loop that accelerated human development. Groups with better tactical capabilities survived at higher rates and controlled better territories. This success supported larger populations and more sophisticated social structures, which in turn enabled more complex tactical development. The advantages of tactical thinking became self-reinforcing. By the end of this period, the fundamental dynamics of predator-prey relationships had been transformed. Saber-toothed cats and other apex predators were no longer dealing with simple prey that could be hunted according to instinctive patterns. They were facing intelligent opponents who could anticipate, plan, and coordinate responses that neutralized millions of years of predatory evolution. The stage was set for the next phase of this ancient conflict, a period where human tactical superiority would be tested against predators desperate enough to adapt their own strategies in response to this unprecedented challenge. Chapter 6. Strength Numbers. In the dying light of a Pleistocene evening, 23 early humans stood in formation around their camp, wooden spears glinting in the firelight. This wasn't a hunting party or a migration group. This was something entirely new in the history of life on Earth, a military unit specifically organized for defense against apex predators. What they were about to demonstrate would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the ancient world. The discovery that group size could be optimized for survival against predators represents one of the most remarkable insights in the archaeological record. Recent computer simulations based on archaeological evidence have revealed that early humans didn't just randomly cluster together for safety. They developed sophisticated understanding of optimal group dynamics that maximize survival while minimizing resource competition. The mathematics of survival against saber-toothed cats were brutally simple yet profound in their implications. A single human faced with a saber-toothed cat had virtually no chance of survival. Two humans had slightly better odds, but still faced overwhelming disadvantages. But something remarkable happened when group sizes reached double digits. The survival calculus shifted dramatically in favor of the humans. Computer models based on archaeological evidence and modern predator behavior studies suggest that groups of 12 to 15 humans represented the optimal size for confronting large predators. Below this threshold, groups lacked sufficient coordination and firepower to deter attack. Above this size, The advantages of additional members were outweighed by increased visibility to predators, greater resource requirements, and coordination challenges. But raw numbers were only part of the equation. The effectiveness of human groups depended critically on organization, training, and equipment. Archaeological evidence suggests that successful groups developed formal or informal rank structures that enabled rapid decision-making and coordinated response to threats. These weren't simple mob tactics. They were organized military formations adapted for prehistoric warfare. The psychological dynamics of large group defense were as important as the tactical ones. Individual humans facing saber-toothed cats would experience overwhelming fear and stress that could paralyze rational decision-making. But humans in properly organized groups could support each other emotionally as well as physically. Shared courage became possible when each individual knew they weren't facing danger alone. Evidence from sites across Europe and Africa suggests early humans developed standardized defensive formations that maximized their collective advantages. Spear carriers formed the outer perimeter, using their reach advantage to keep predators at distance. Secondary defenders with shorter weapons filled gaps and provided backup. Non-combatants, including children and elderly group members, were positioned in the center where they could be protected while still contributing to the defense through tasks like maintaining fires and supplying weapons. The logistics of maintaining defensive groups were staggering. Each member required food, water, shelter, and tools. Weapons had to be manufactured, maintained, and replaced when damaged. The group had to move as a unit while maintaining defensive capabilities, coordinate resource gathering without compromising security, and manage internal conflicts that might weaken external defense. Archaeological analysis reveals that successful groups developed sophisticated division of labor systems that address these challenges. Some members specialized in weapon production and maintenance. Others focused on resource gathering and logistics. Still others served as scouts and intelligence gatherers. This specialization enabled groups to maintain higher overall capabilities than would be possible if every member attempted to master every skill. The communication challenges faced by large defensive groups drove innovations that would have profound implications for human development. Coordinated defense required rapid, accurate communication across the entire group. Commands had to be given and understood instantly. Information about predator location and behavior had to be shared without alerting the predators themselves. Coordination had to continue even when visual contact between group members was broken. Evidence suggests early humans developed sophisticated signaling systems that addressed these needs. Archaeological sites reveal patterns of stone arrangements that may have served as communication markers. Cave paintings from later periods show clear evidence of symbolic representation. These capabilities would have been crucial for coordinating complex defensive operations involving large numbers of individuals. The territorial implications of large group defense were revolutionary. A single family group might control a small territory around their immediate shelter, but organized defensive groups could project power across much larger areas. They could establish and maintain territories that provided access to diverse resources while offering multiple defensive advantages. Modern studies of territorial behavior in social species provide insights into how this expansion might have functioned. Larger, better organized groups can exclude competitors from choice territories and force them into marginal areas with fewer resources and greater dangers. The advantages of superior organization compound over time, creating cumulative benefits that grow across generations. But large group organization also created new vulnerabilities that had to be managed. Bigger groups were more visible to predators and might attract attention from multiple predator species simultaneously. They required more resources and could exhaust local food supplies more quickly. Internal conflicts could compromise external defense if not properly managed. Archaeological evidence suggests early humans developed sophisticated protocols for addressing these challenges. Groups were organized to provide multiple layers of security, with outer scouts positioned to detect threats while inner members maintained camp security. Resources were managed to avoid overexploitation of local areas. Social structures were developed to minimize internal conflicts and resolve disputes before they compromised group effectiveness. The seasonal dynamics of group organization were complex and adaptive. During periods when predator activity was high, groups might consolidate for maximum defensive capability. During safer periods, they might split into smaller units for more efficient resource gathering. The ability to dynamically adjust group size and organization based on circumstances provided significant advantages over species with fixed social structures. Evidence from multiple archaeological sites suggests that this period saw the emergence of intergroup cooperation on an unprecedented scale. Defensive alliances between groups could provide mutual support during particularly dangerous periods. Information about predator movements could be shared across wide areas. Successful defensive techniques could be transmitted between groups and adapted to local conditions. The success of large group defense strategies created a feedback loop that accelerated human social development. Groups with better organization and cooperation survived at higher rates and controlled better territories. This success supported larger populations and more complex social structures, which in turn enabled even more sophisticated group organization. Perhaps most importantly, the challenges of large group defense drove innovations in leadership and governance that would prove crucial for later human social development. Coordinating defensive operations required individuals who could make rapid decisions under stress, communicate effectively with diverse group members, and maintain morale during dangerous periods. These leadership skills became foundational for increasingly complex human social organizations. The weapons technology of this period shows clear evidence of standardization that supported large group tactics. Similar spear designs appear across wide geographic areas, suggesting shared manufacturing techniques and tactical doctrines. Toolkits become more specialized and sophisticated, with different implements optimized for specific roles within coordinated defensive strategies. Training and skill development became critical elements of group survival. Archaeological sites show evidence of organized practice areas where group members could develop and maintain combat skills. Mock battles and coordinated exercises would have been necessary to ensure defensive plans could be executed effectively under the stress of actual predator encounters. The psychological benefits of successful group defense extended far beyond immediate survival. Groups that could effectively protect themselves from predators gained confidence and morale that affected every aspect of their lives. They could take greater risks in exploration and resource gathering. They could invest more time and energy in technological and social development rather than constant vigilance against threats. By the end of this period, human groups had achieved something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth: the ability to consistently defeat apex predators through superior organization rather than superior physical capabilities. Saber-toothed cats and other large predators were learning that humans in groups were not just difficult prey. They were genuinely dangerous opponents, capable of inflicting serious damage on any predator foolish enough to attack them. The foundation had been laid for the next phase of this ancient conflict, a period where the accumulated advantages of human cooperation would begin to shift the fundamental balance of power in favor of intelligence over instinct, planning over aggression, and coordination over individual prowess. Chapter 7. Mind Games. The saber-toothed cat crouched in the shadows at the forest edge, muscles coiled for the explosive charge that had brought down countless prey over millions of years. But something was wrong. The human group ahead showed none of the usual signs of prey animals. They weren't scattered in panic. They weren't running blindly. Instead, they moved with deliberate purpose, almost as if they knew exactly where the predator was hiding and were deliberately drawing it into some kind of trap. For the first time in the ancient relationship between predators and prey, the hunters were being out-hunted by their supposed victims. What was happening in that moment represented a revolution in cognitive warfare. Early humans had learned to think like their predators and use that understanding against them. The development of psychological warfare capabilities in early humans represents one of the most sophisticated adaptations in the fossil record. Archaeological evidence suggests our ancestors developed detailed understanding of predator psychology and learned to exploit the predictable behaviors that had previously made saber-toothed cats such effective hunters. Modern studies of large predator behavior reveal the consistency of hunting patterns that early humans learned to read and manipulate. Saber-toothed cats, like most large predators, followed remarkably predictable sequences when hunting. They preferred specific approach routes that provided cover while minimizing their energy expenditure. They attacked from preferred angles that maximized their physical advantages. They relied on specific environmental cues to assess prey vulnerability. Early humans learned to recognize these patterns and use them strategically. Archaeological sites reveal evidence of deliberate modifications to environments that disrupted predator hunting strategies. Natural cover was removed from preferred approach routes. False scent trails were created to mislead predators about human location and numbers. Even individual behavior was modified to send specific signals about group capabilities and intentions. The psychological manipulation techniques our ancestors developed were remarkably sophisticated. Evidence suggests they learned to exploit the territorial instincts of saber-toothed cats, using deliberate provocations to drive predators away from areas humans wanted to access. They could simulate the presence of larger groups through coordinated noise-making and movement patterns. They could even mimic the behaviors of other predator species to discourage saber-toothed cat activity in specific areas. Consider the cognitive sophistication required for these strategies. Humans had to develop detailed mental models of predator psychology, understand how environmental factors influence predator decision-making, and coordinate complex deception campaigns that maintained consistency across multiple group members and extended time periods. This level of psychological sophistication was unprecedented in the animal kingdom. The role of false signals in human defensive strategies was particularly innovative. Archaeological evidence suggests early humans learned to manipulate every aspect of their observable behavior to influence predator perceptions. Group movements could be choreographed to suggest larger or smaller numbers than actually present. Camp arrangements could be designed to signal strength or weakness depending on strategic objectives. Even individual posture and movement patterns could be modified to send specific messages to observing predators. Modern research into predator cognition reveals how these deceptions might have functioned. Large predators make hunting decisions based on rapid assessment of multiple environmental cues. Prey size, health status, group cohesion, and defensive capabilities are all evaluated in seconds through observation of subtle behavioral signals. Humans who could consciously control these signals could manipulate predator decision-making processes. The development of deliberate intimidation tactics marked another revolutionary advance in human defensive capabilities. Rather than simply hiding from predators or fighting when cornered, early humans learned to actively discourage predator attacks through psychological pressure, coordinated displays of group strength, aggressive posturing, and strategic use of noise and fire could convince predators that attacking human groups was likely to result in injury or death. Archaeological evidence from sites like Kesem Cave in Israel suggests early humans developed sophisticated understanding of how environmental modifications could influence predator behavior. Fire wasn't just used for immediate protection. It was deployed strategically to create psychological barriers that predators would be reluctant to cross. The mere presence of controlled fire in an area could cause predators to alter their territorial boundaries and hunting patterns. The seasonal aspects of psychological warfare were complex and adaptive. Predator behavior varied significantly across seasons based on breeding cycles, prey availability, and environmental conditions. Early humans learned to adjust their psychological strategies accordingly. During breeding seasons when predators were more aggressive, deception techniques might emphasize group strength and cohesion. During hunting seasons when predators were focused on prey acquisition, strategies might focus on making human groups appear unprofitable or dangerous targets. Evidence suggests that this period saw the development of what modern strategists would recognize as disinformation campaigns. False camps could be established to mislead predators about actual human locations. Deliberate scent trails could be created to suggest group movements in directions opposite to actual travel routes. Even the timing of activities could be modified to disrupt predator hunting schedules and force them into less optimal hunting periods. The social coordination required for effective psychological warfare drove significant advances in human communication and planning capabilities. Deception campaigns required precise coordination between group members to maintain consistency and avoid contradictory signals. Information about predator behavior had to be shared and analyzed collectively. Strategic planning had to account for complex interactions between environmental factors, predator psychology, and human capabilities. The success of psychological warfare strategies created feedback loops that accelerated human cognitive development. Groups that could think more strategically and understand predator psychology more accurately survived at higher rates. This success supported larger populations and more complex social structures, which in turn enabled more sophisticated psychological strategy development. Perhaps most remarkably, evidence suggests early humans developed what modern psychologists would recognize as theory of mind capabilities, specifically adapted for predator management. They learned to model predator mental states, predict predator responses to various stimuli, and design complex strategies based on anticipated predator reactions. This ability to think about what other minds were thinking represented a crucial advance in human cognitive evolution. The territorial implications of successful psychological warfare were profound. Groups that could consistently manipulate predator behavior could effectively control much larger territories than their actual defensive capabilities would suggest. Predators could be discouraged from entering areas through psychological pressure alone, creating safe zones that could be exploited for resource gathering and movement. The weapons and tools of this period show clear evidence of psychological as well as practical design considerations. Implements weren't just optimized for effectiveness. They were designed to send specific signals to predators about human capabilities and intentions. Large, prominently displayed weapons could serve as deterrents even when not actively used. Tool arrangements at campsites could suggest sophisticated organization and preparation that might discourage predator attacks. Training in psychological warfare techniques became an essential element of group survival. Archaeological sites show evidence of organized instruction in predator behavior observation and interpretation. Group members had to learn not just how to fight predators, but how to read their intentions, predict their actions, and influence their decisions through deliberate manipulation of environmental and behavioral cues. The ethical implications of these developments were complex and far-reaching. For the first time in the history of life on Earth, one species was systematically deceiving another through conscious manipulation of behavioral signals. This represented a fundamental shift from honest signaling systems that had governed predator-prey relationships from millions of years to strategic communication designed to gain advantages through deception. By the end of this period, the ancient relationship between predators and prey had been transformed into something entirely new, a cognitive arms race where success depended not just on physical capabilities, but on the ability to understand, predict, and manipulate the behavior of other intelligent species. Saber-toothed cats were no longer just dealing with clever prey. They were facing opponents capable of genuine psychological warfare. The stage was set for the final phase of this ancient conflict, a period where the accumulated psychological advantages would combine with technological and social innovations to tip the balance of power decisively in favor of human intelligence over predatory instinct. Chapter 8. Territory War. The ancient valley stretched before them like a chessboard, every hill and stream representing strategic positions in an invisible war. But this wasn't a conflict between rival human groups. This was something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth. An intelligent species systematically conquering territory from apex predators through superior planning and organization. The age of human territorial dominance had begun. What made human territorial expansion different from the simple range expansion of other species was its deliberate, strategic nature. Archaeological evidence reveals that early humans didn't just occupy available territories. They actively displaced predators from prime locations through coordinated campaigns that would be recognizable to modern military strategists as territorial conquest. The strategic value of territory in the ancient world was enormous. Prime locations provided access to water, shelter, prey animals, and raw materials for toolmaking. They offered defensive advantages like elevated positions, natural barriers, and multiple escape routes. Most importantly, they provided the resources necessary to support larger group sizes that could mount more effective defenses against predators. Saber-toothed cats and other large predators had claimed the best territories through millions of years of successful competition. These locations were defended through scent marking, aggressive displays, and violent confrontation with competitors. The territories were maintained through constant patrolling and immediate response to incursions by other predators or prey species. Early humans developed strategies for challenging this established territorial order that exploited their unique capabilities. Rather than competing through individual combat like other species, humans used coordinated group tactics that could overwhelm even the most formidable individual predators. They could maintain pressure on predator territories through persistent harassment rather than direct confrontation. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe and Africa suggests early humans developed what modern strategists would recognize as siege warfare techniques. Rather than attempting to defeat predators in direct battle, they would systematically eliminate the resources that predators needed to maintain their territories. Water sources could be monopolized through constant human presence. Prey animals could be driven away or hunted to local extinction. Shelter sites could be occupied and defended by human groups. The psychological aspects of territorial competition were as important as the physical ones. Predators that had held territories unchallenged for generations suddenly found themselves facing constant pressure from organized human groups. The stress of continuous territorial defense likely affected predator health, breeding success, and hunting effectiveness. Some predators may have abandoned prime territories rather than face the constant challenge of dealing with human occupation. Evidence suggests early humans developed sophisticated intelligence gathering capabilities specifically for territorial competition. Predator movements were tracked and analyzed to identify territorial boundaries and patrol patterns. Behavioral observations could reveal which territories were most important to specific predators and which might be abandoned under pressure. This intelligence was used to plan territorial acquisition, campaigns that minimized human casualties while maximizing territorial gains. The seasonal dynamics of territorial competition were complex and carefully managed. Human groups learned to time their territorial expansion efforts to coincide with periods when predators were most vulnerable. Breeding seasons when predators were focused on reproduction rather than territorial defense provided opportunities for expansion. Winter periods when predator mobility was reduced could be exploited for consolidating territorial gains. Coordinated territorial campaigns required unprecedented levels of planning and organization among human groups. Multiple groups had to coordinate their movements to maintain pressure on predator territories from different directions simultaneously. Resources had to be allocated to support extended territorial campaigns. Communication systems had to function across wide areas to coordinate complex operations. The success of these territorial campaigns was documented in the archaeological record through the systematic replacement of predator-associated remains with human artifacts across wide geographic areas. Sites that had been dominated by saber-toothed cat remains for thousands of years suddenly show evidence of human occupation and predator absence. The transition was often rapid, suggesting coordinated displacement rather than gradual expansion. Fire played a crucial role in territorial conquest strategies. Controlled burns could modify landscapes to favor human occupation while making them less suitable for predators. Strategic fire placement could create barriers that channeled predator movements away from areas humans wanted to occupy. The psychological impact of controlled fire could cause predators to abandon territories voluntarily rather than face the challenge of dealing with fire using humans. The weapons technology of this period shows clear evidence of adaptation for territorial warfare rather than simple defense. Projectile weapons became more sophisticated, allowing humans to harass predators from safe distances. Trap and barrier construction techniques were developed to control predator access to specific areas. Tool designs were optimized for rapid deployment and mobility during territorial campaigns. Evidence suggests that successful territorial expansion required innovations in logistics and supply management that pushed human organizational capabilities to new levels. Extended territorial campaigns needed supply lines to provide food, water, tools, and weapons to forward groups. Medical capabilities were needed to treat injuries sustained during territorial operations. Communication systems had to coordinate activities across distances that tested the limits of prehistoric technology. The social implications of territorial conquest were profound. Groups that controlled better territories could support larger populations and more sophisticated social structures. Success in territorial competition provided advantages that compounded across generations. The psychological benefits of controlling territory that had previously been dominated by predators likely had significant effects on human confidence and cultural development. Intergroup cooperation reached new levels of sophistication during this period. Territorial campaigns often required coordination between multiple human groups that might otherwise compete for resources. These alliances had to balance cooperation in territorial conquest with competition for the territories being acquired. The diplomatic and organizational skills required for managing these relationships drove innovations in human social organization. The predator response to human territorial expansion varied but was generally unsuccessful. Some predator species attempted to increase their aggression and territorial defense, but this often resulted in greater casualties from encounters with organized human groups. Others tried to shift to marginal territories, but these areas typically provided insufficient resources to maintain viable populations. A few species may have attempted to modify their behavior to coexist with human territorial control, but the archaeological record suggests limited success with this strategy. The environmental consequences of human territorial expansion were significant and far-reaching. Landscapes that had been shaped by millions of years of predator activity began to change rapidly under human influence. Prey animal populations shifted in response to changing predation patterns. Vegetation communities were modified by human fire management and resource-gathering activities. Entire ecosystems began to reorganize around human rather than predator influence. The speed of territorial conquest was remarkably rapid once the process began. Archaeological evidence suggests that in some regions, human groups displaced predators from vast areas within a few hundred years, an extremely short time period in evolutionary terms. This rapid expansion was possible because human territorial strategies were fundamentally different from those of other species, and predators had no evolutionary experience dealing with coordinated territorial conquest. The success of territorial expansion created feedback loops that accelerated human development and predator decline. Control of prime territories provided resources that supported larger human populations and more sophisticated technologies. Better territories attracted additional human groups and facilitated the sharing of successful territorial strategies. Meanwhile, predators displaced from prime territories suffered reduced resources, breeding success, and survival rates. By the end of this period, the ancient territorial order had been fundamentally transformed. Saber-toothed cats and other apex predators found themselves systematically excluded from the territories they had controlled for millions of years. Human groups had demonstrated that intelligence, organization, and coordination could triumph over millions of years of evolutionary adaptation to territorial control. The stage was set for the final chapter of this ancient conflict, a period where the accumulated advantages of human territorial control would combine with continued technological and social innovation to complete the transformation from a world dominated by physical predators to one controlled by intelligent, organized humans. Chapter 9. Final Hunt. The last great saber-toothed cat of Europe crouched in the shadows of a world that no longer belonged to its kind. Around it stretched landscapes that had been transformed beyond recognition. Forests deliberately managed by fire, clearings created for human settlements, game trails that led to human hunting grounds rather than natural feeding areas. After millions of years of unchallenged dominance, the age of the apex predator was ending, not with a roar, but with the systematic displacement of species that could no longer compete with organized intelligence. This wasn't extinction through climate change or natural disaster. This was something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth: the deliberate elimination of competing predator species through coordinated human action. Archaeological evidence suggests that by 40,000 years ago, human groups had developed the capability to actively hunt apex predators rather than simply defend against them. The transition from defensive warfare to offensive hunting campaigns represented a fundamental shift in the relationship between humans and their former predators. Groups that had once hidden from saber-toothed cats were now actively seeking them out for elimination. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey species had evolved into the ultimate predator. Evidence from archaeological sites across Europe and Asia documents this remarkable transformation. Sites that had shown evidence of human-predator coexistence began to show exclusively human occupation. Predator remains become increasingly rare and finally disappear entirely from the archaeological record. The disappearance was systematic and coordinated, suggesting deliberate campaigns rather than natural population decline. The weapons technology developed for hunting apex predators was sophisticated beyond anything seen in earlier periods. Archaeological evidence reveals spear designs optimized for penetrating the thick hides and dense muscles of large predators. Projectile points were engineered for maximum tissue damage and blood loss. Trap designs were scaled up to capture and kill animals, weighing hundreds of pounds. But technology alone wasn't sufficient for hunting apex predators. These campaigns required tactical innovations that pushed human organizational capabilities to unprecedented levels. Coordinated drives could force predators into prepared killing zones. Multiple groups could maintain pressure on individual predators across days or weeks, preventing rest and recovery. Systematic tracking could locate predator dens and eliminate entire family groups. The psychological warfare techniques developed in earlier periods were refined for offensive operations. Human groups learned to use their understanding of predator psychology to force confrontations under circumstances that favored human victory. Predators could be provoked into attacking when and where humans were best prepared to receive them. Territorial instincts could be exploited to draw predators into us. Elaborate ambushes. Archaeological evidence suggests that hunting apex predators became a central cultural activity for many human groups. Sites reveal specialized tools and facilities dedicated specifically to predator hunting. Cave paintings from this period show detailed depictions of human groups engaged in coordinated attacks on large predators. The frequency and sophistication of these images suggest that predator hunting had become a defining aspect of human identity. The social implications of offensive predator hunting were profound. Success in these campaigns required the highest levels of coordination, courage, and skill that human groups could achieve. The individuals who led successful predator hunts likely gained enormous social status and influence within their groups. These campaigns became proving grounds for leadership and markers of group prestige. The seasonal timing of predator hunting campaigns was carefully planned to maximize success while minimizing human casualties. Attacks were often timed to coincide with periods when predators were most vulnerable, during breeding seasons when they were protective of territory, during harsh weather when their mobility was reduced, or during periods when natural prey was scarce and predators were weakened by hunger. Evidence from multiple sites suggests that predator hunting became a coordinated effort involving multiple human groups across wide geographic areas. Information about predator locations and behavior was shared between groups. Hunting campaigns were planned and executed as joint operations involving dozens or hundreds of individuals. The scale of coordination required for these operations drove innovations in human communication and organizational capabilities. The motivations for actively hunting apex predators were complex and multifaceted. Eliminating predators reduced direct threats to human groups and allowed expansion into previously dangerous territories. Predator hunting also provided valuable resources: hides for clothing and shelter, bones for tools, and prestige items for trade and social exchange. Perhaps most importantly, successful predator hunting demonstrated human dominance over the natural world. The ecological consequences of systematic predator elimination were dramatic and far-reaching. Ecosystems that had been organized around large predator activity for millions of years began to reorganize around human activity. Prey animal populations increased and shifted their behavior in response to reduced predation pressure. Vegetation communities changed as grazing patterns were modified by the absence of large predators. The predator response to systematic hunting pressure was generally unsuccessful. Species that had evolved for millions of years to compete with other predators had no evolutionary experience dealing with coordinated hunting by their former prey. Behavioral modifications that might have been effective against other predator species were ineffective against intelligent, organized human groups. Some predator species attempted to avoid confrontation with humans by shifting to more remote territories. But human territorial expansion was so rapid and comprehensive that few areas remained beyond human influence. Others tried to modify their behavior to avoid detection, but human tracking and intelligence gathering capabilities made concealment increasingly difficult. A few species may have attempted to coexist with human groups, but the archaeological record suggests limited success with this strategy. The weapons innovations of this period show clear evidence of specialization for hunting specific types of large predators. Different point designs were optimized for different predator species based on their anatomy and behavior. Trap designs were adapted for the size and strength of different predators. Even hunting tactics were specialized, based on detailed understanding of individual predator species capabilities and vulnerabilities. Evidence suggests that the period of active predator hunting was relatively brief, but extraordinarily effective. Archaeological records show that in many regions, large predator populations collapsed within a few hundred years of the beginning of systematic hunting campaigns. The speed and thoroughness of this elimination suggests that human hunting pressure was the primary factor rather than environmental change or other natural causes. The cultural significance of predator hunting extended far beyond immediate practical benefits. Success in eliminating species that had terrorized human groups for hundreds of thousands of years likely had profound psychological effects on human cultural development. These victories demonstrated that intelligence and organization could triumph over any natural challenge, establishing patterns of technological optimism that would characterize human culture for millennia. The knowledge and skills developed during predator hunting campaigns had applications far beyond their original purpose. The organizational capabilities required for coordinating large-scale hunting operations could be applied to other complex challenges. The weapons technology developed for hunting large predators could be adapted for hunting other species or for conflicts between human groups. The tactical innovations could be transferred to new environments and new challenges by the end of this period. The Great Age of Apex Predators was effectively over across vast regions of Europe, Asia, and eventually the Americas. Species that had ruled unchallenged for millions of years had been eliminated through the Territorial, coordinated action of a species that had evolved from their prey. The last saber-toothed cats, cave bears, and other great predators disappeared from landscapes that would henceforth be dominated by human intelligence rather than natural selection. The transformation was complete. Humanity had evolved from scattered prey, hiding in caves, to the dominant species on Earth, capable of eliminating any challenge through superior organization and technology. The final hunt had been won not through superior strength or speed, but through the power of intelligence, cooperation, and systematic thinking applied with deadly effectiveness. Chapter 10. Evolutionary Edge. 10,000 years ago, the last saber-toothed cat drew its final breath on a continent that no longer had room for apex predators. But this moment wasn't just the end of an individual animal or even a species. It marked the completion of the most remarkable evolutionary transformation in the history of life on Earth. In less than 300,000 years, our ancestors had evolved from scattered prey into the planet's ultimate predator, not through physical adaptation, but through the development of capabilities that transcended biology itself. The evolutionary implications of this transformation were staggering. Traditional evolution through natural selection operates over millions of years, slowly refining physical and behavioral traits through differential survival and reproduction. But humans had discovered something unprecedented: cultural evolution. the ability to develop and transmit survival advantages through learning rather than genetics. The speed of this cultural evolution was breathtaking compared to biological processes, where genetic adaptations might take thousands of generations to spread through a population. Successful innovations in toolmaking, tactics, or social organization could spread to new groups within years or decades. A technological breakthrough made by one group could be adopted and improved by hundreds of groups across vast geographic areas within a single generation. This acceleration was made possible by capabilities that had never before existed in the animal kingdom. Language allowed complex information to be transmitted with unprecedented precision and detail. Abstract thinking enabled humans to model future scenarios and plan responses to situations they had never directly experienced. Cultural memory preserved successful strategies across generations and allowed continuous refinement of techniques. The relationship between cultural and biological evolution during this period created feedback loops that accelerated human development in unprecedented ways. Better tools and tactics improved survival rates, allowing larger populations that could support more specialists and innovators. Larger groups could attempt more complex strategies and survive occasional failures that would have eliminated smaller groups. Success bred more success in an accelerating spiral of development. Archaeological evidence reveals the extraordinary pace of innovation during the final phase of human-predator conflict. Tool technologies that had remained stable for hundreds of thousands of years began evolving rapidly. Social organization became increasingly complex and sophisticated. Territorial control expanded at unprecedented rates. The rate of change was so rapid that archaeologists can track innovations spreading across continents within centuries rather than millennia. The cognitive demands of this accelerated evolution drove remarkable changes in human brain development. Archaeological evidence shows that human brain size increased by nearly 50% during the period when predator-prey relationships were being transformed. This expansion wasn't random. It was concentrated in areas associated with planning, social coordination, and abstract thinking, precisely the capabilities needed for complex anti-predator strategies. But brain size alone doesn't explain the full extent of human cognitive evolution. Archaeological evidence suggests that brain organization became increasingly sophisticated, with greater specialization of different regions for specific cognitive tasks. The neural networks required for complex tool use, social coordination, and strategic planning became more efficient and powerful. The social implications of these cognitive changes were revolutionary. Larger, more sophisticated brains enabled new forms of social organization that could support much larger group sizes, while maintaining coordination and cooperation. Leadership structures became more complex and specialized. Communication systems evolved to handle increasingly complex information about strategies, technologies, and territorial management. Evidence suggests that this period saw the emergence of what modern anthropologists recognize as true culture, shared systems of knowledge, beliefs and practices that were transmitted across generations and modified based on experience. These cultural systems became humanity's primary adaptation mechanism, allowing rapid response to new challenges without waiting for genetic evolution. The territorial implications of accelerated human evolution were profound. Groups that could innovate and adapt more rapidly could expand into new territories and displace competitors more effectively. The advantages of cultural evolution compounded across generations, creating expanding zones of human dominance that eventually covered entire continents. The predator species that faced this evolutionary revolution had no comparable adaptation mechanism. Their behaviors and capabilities were largely fixed by millions of years of genetic programming. They could not innovate new strategies or rapidly adapt to changing circumstances. When humans developed effective countermeasures to predator hunting techniques, the predators had no mechanism for developing countermeasures. This mismatch in evolutionary speed created an increasingly uneven contest. While saber-toothed cats and other predators remained essentially unchanged over thousands of years, human capabilities were improving continuously. Each generation of humans was more skilled, better equipped, and more organized than the previous one. The trajectory was clear. Eventual human dominance was not just possible but inevitable. The technological innovations of this period show clear evidence of accelerating development. Tool designs became more sophisticated at an increasing rate. New materials and manufacturing techniques were developed and refined. Specialized tools for specific purposes proliferated. The archaeological record shows a clear pattern of exponential technological advancement rather than gradual linear improvement. Weapons technology evolved with particular rapidity during this period. Archaeological sites show increasingly sophisticated projectile points, designed for maximum effectiveness against large predators. Trap designs became more complex and deadly. New techniques for coordinating multiple weapons in group combat situations were developed and refined. The social technologies required for complex anti-predator strategies drove innovations in human organization that would prove crucial for later cultural development. Leadership systems became more sophisticated and specialized. Decision-making processes were developed for coordinating large group activities. Conflict resolution mechanisms were created to maintain group cohesion during stressful periods. Communication technologies evolved rapidly to meet the demands of coordinating complex group strategies. Archaeological evidence suggests that symbolic representation capabilities developed during this period, enabling more precise transmission of complex information. These capabilities would later become the foundation for art, writing, and other advanced cultural achievements. The success of human evolutionary strategies created feedback loops that accelerated development even further. Groups that could evolve and adapt more rapidly controlled better territories and resources. These advantages supported larger populations that could attempt more innovative strategies. Success in one area enabled investment in other areas, creating cumulative advantages that grew across generations. Perhaps most remarkably, the evolutionary advantages humans developed for competing with apex predators proved to be general purpose, capabilities that could be applied to virtually any challenge. The same cognitive skills used for outmaneuvering saber-toothed cats could be adapted for hunting other species, exploring new territories, or developing new technologies. The organizational capabilities required for coordinated predator defense could be applied to large-scale construction projects, resource management, or social coordination. By the end of this period, humans had achieved something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth. They had transcended the limitations of biological evolution and created a new form of adaptation based on intelligence, learning, and cultural transmission. The species that had once cowered in caves from saber-toothed cats had become capable of reshaping entire ecosystems through conscious planning and coordinated action. Evolutionary edge that humans had developed was not just a temporary advantage in an ancient conflict. It was a fundamental transformation in the nature of life itself, creating capabilities that would eventually enable our species to dominate not just terrestrial ecosystems, but the entire planet and beyond. The battle with the saber-toothed cats had forged the cognitive and cultural tools that would make humanity the most powerful force in the history of Earth. Chapter 11. Modern Legacy. You wake up in the middle of the night with your heart pounding, every sense alert to dangers that no longer exist. In that moment of primal terror, you are experiencing the same fear response that kept your ancestors alive 300,000 years ago, when saber-toothed cats prowled outside their caves. The ancient battle that transformed our species didn't just shape our past, it created the very foundation of what makes us human today. The legacy of humanity's conflict with apex predators permeates every aspect of modern life in ways we're only beginning to understand. Our deepest fears, our social structures, our technological drives, and even our entertainment preferences all bear the invisible marks of that ancient struggle. We are the descendants of the survivors, and their survival strategies have become our defining characteristics. Consider the modern human fear response system. We startle at sudden sounds, scan environments for potential threats, and experience intense anxiety in situations that trigger ancient predator detection mechanisms. These responses seem maladaptive in a world where the most dangerous predator most of us encounter is the family dog. But they represent finely tuned survival systems, inherited from ancestors who faced genuine daily threats from creatures specifically evolved to kill humans. Research into human psychology reveals that many of our most persistent fears correspond directly to threats our ancestors faced during the age of apex predators. Fear of darkness, of being alone, of sudden movements, of large animals, and of being stalked all make perfect sense in the context of predator-prey relationships that shaped human evolution for hundreds of thousands of years. These aren't irrational phobias. They're highly rational responses to dangers that were genuine threats for most of human evolutionary history. The social structures that define modern civilization can be traced directly to innovations developed for defense against predators. Our tendency to form groups, our complex communication systems, our hierarchical organizations, and our capacity for coordinated action all evolved as anti-predator strategies. The multinational corporations, military organizations, and social networks that characterize modern society are sophisticated expressions of cooperation capabilities that began with small groups of humans coordinating spear thrusts against saber-toothed cats. Modern technology represents the continuation of the tool-making traditions that began with fire-hardened wooden spears. The same cognitive processes that enabled our ancestors to design weapons capable of stopping apex predators now create smartphones, spacecraft, and artificial intelligence systems. The accelerating pace of technological development follows patterns established during the rapid innovation period when humans were developing countermeasures to predator hunting strategies. The territorial behaviors that characterize modern nation-states, property ownership, and resource competition all derive from strategies developed for competing with apex predators for prime territories. The same psychological drives that motivated our ancestors to displace saber-toothed cats from choice hunting grounds now fuel expansion into new markets, competition for resources, and efforts to control strategic locations around the globe. Even our entertainment preferences reflect ancient predator-prey dynamics. Horror movies, action films, and video games frequently feature scenarios where humans must survive against powerful, intelligent predators. These entertainment forms tap into deep psychological patterns established during hundreds of thousands of years of genuine predator threats. We find these scenarios compelling because they activate ancient survival circuits that remain active in modern brains. The competitive drives that characterize everything from sports to business can be understood as expressions of the same capabilities that enabled our ancestors to outcompete apex predators. The strategic thinking, tactical planning, and coordinated team action that dominate modern competitive activities all derive from anti-predator innovations. Professional sports teams function according to principles of coordination and specialization that were developed for fighting saber-tooth cats. Modern military organizations represent the direct descendants of the coordinated defensive groups that first learned to defeat apex predators through superior organization. Contemporary military tactics, command structures, and strategic principles all evolve from innovations developed for small group defense against large predators. The same capabilities that enabled early humans to coordinate spear attacks against individual saber-toothed cats now coordinate global military operations involving millions of personnel. The scientific revolution that has transformed human understanding of the natural world represents the continuation of observation and analysis skills developed for understanding predator behavior. The same cognitive processes that enabled our ancestors to track saber-toothed cat movements, predict their hunting patterns, and develop countermeasures now enable scientists to understand complex natural phenomena and develop technologies that manipulate fundamental forces of nature. The acceleration of cultural evolution that began during the human-predator conflict continues to accelerate in modern times. The same mechanisms that enabled rapid development and transmission of anti-predator innovations now drive technological and social changes that transform entire societies within decades. The pace of change that began with competing against apex predators now characterizes every aspect of modern civilization. Modern conservation efforts represent a complex relationship with our predator heritage. Having eliminated most large predators from human-dominated landscapes, we now work to preserve the few remaining species through artificial protection systems. This represents a remarkable transformation from the period when human survival depended on eliminating these same species. Our ancestors would likely be amazed that their descendants voluntarily protect creatures they spent hundreds of thousands of years learning to defeat. The psychological implications of predator elimination continue to affect modern human behavior in subtle ways. Some researchers suggest that the absence of genuine predator threats in modern environments creates anxiety and stress that manifest in other forms. The hypervigilance and threat detection systems that kept our ancestors alive now sometimes misfire in modern environments, creating anxiety disorders and stress-related health problems. Urban design and architecture reflect ancient anti-predator principles in ways that most people never consciously recognize. We prefer elevated locations that provide good visibility of surrounding areas. We value lighting systems that eliminate dark areas where threats might hide. We design buildings with multiple exits and clear sightlines. We arrange living spaces to provide protection while maintaining awareness of potential approaches. These preferences make perfect sense when understood as expressions of anti-predator spatial psychology. The rapid environmental changes characterizing the modern world create challenges that require the same adaptive capabilities. Our ancestors used to outcompete apex predators. Climate change, resource depletion, ecosystem disruption, and biodiversity loss all represent threats that require coordinated, intelligent responses of the type humans developed for dealing with predator challenges. The same capabilities that enabled survival against saber-toothed cats may be essential for addressing contemporary global challenges. Modern medicine represents another continuation of capabilities developed during the predator conflict period. The same observational skills used for tracking predator behavior now enable diagnosis of disease. The coordination capabilities used for group defense now enable complex surgical procedures involving multiple specialists. The innovation drives that created anti-predator Technologies now develop treatments for previously incurable conditions. The global communication networks that characterize modern civilization represent sophisticated expressions of information sharing capabilities that began with coordinating anti-predator strategies. The same basic functions: rapid transmission of threat information, coordination of group responses, and sharing of successful innovations, now operate on planetary scales through internet technologies that connect billions of individuals. Perhaps most remarkably, the space exploration programs that represent humanity's expansion beyond Earth use organizational and technological capabilities that trace their origins to the ancient conflict with apex predators. The same strategic thinking that enabled territorial expansion at the expense of saber-toothed cats now plans missions to Mars. The same coordination capabilities that enabled group defense against individual predators now coordinate international space programs involving thousands of specialists. The story of how early humans outsmarted the saber-toothed cat is ultimately the story of how intelligence, cooperation, and cultural evolution triumphed over physical prowess and instinctual behavior. That victory didn't just ensure human survival. It established the principles that would enable our species to dominate the planet and reach for the stars. Understanding this legacy provides crucial insights into both human nature and the challenges facing modern civilization. We are a species shaped by conflict, refined by challenge, and defined by our capacity to overcome seemingly impossible odds through intelligence and cooperation. The same capabilities that enabled our ancestors to defeat the ultimate predators now position used to address the ultimate challenges facing our species and our planet. The saber-toothed cats are gone, but their greatest legacy may be the extraordinary species they helped create through hundreds of thousands of years of conflict. In learning to defeat our predators, we became something unprecedented in the history of life, a species capable of conscious evolution, deliberate adaptation, and unlimited growth in capability and understanding. We are the children of survivors, the inheritors of the greatest victory in evolutionary history, and the product of an ancient battle that transformed prey into predator, weakness into strength, and fear into the foundation of human greatness. The next time you feel that ancient fear in the darkness, remember that you carry within you the legacy of ancestors who faced that fear and conquered it, transforming themselves and their descendants in the process. In the end, the early humans didn't just outsmart the saber-toothed cat, they used that victory to outsmart nature itself, creating a new form of existence based on intelligence rather than instinct, cooperation rather than competition, and hope rather than fear. That transformation continues today, driven by the same capabilities that first enabled our ancestors to light fires in the darkness and stand together against creatures that had ruled the world for millions of years. The battle may be ancient, but its lessons are eternal. Intelligence trumps strength, cooperation defeats competition, and the greatest predator of all is an organized, innovative, and determined human mind.